Senator Allen. Senator Allen, you have two items, both candidates for suspense. My understanding is you're waiving presentation on SB 687.
That's correct, yeah.
Correct. So we have SB 637. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Just want to thank the committee for giving me the time to present this bill. We'll be brief. SB 637 seeks to address a recent court ruling which found that California's regulatory program for suction dredge mining violated the Federal Supremacy Clause and the 1872 Mining Act because our State Department of Fish and Wildlife does not have the authority to fully mitigate all of the environmental impacts that were directed by the legislature, and thus could not issue permits and lift the moratorium on suction dredge mining that we've had in place since 2009. So this bill seeks to respond to this recent court ruling by empowering the State Water Resources Control Board to use its regulatory powers under the Federal Clean Water Act to address the water quality issues associated with suction dredge mining. This addresses both the gap in regulatory authority and also clearly ensures that California's regulatory program is in line with federal protections. So when the department first issued its environmental impact report on suction dredge mining regulations in 2012, the department recognized that it did not have the authority to regulate impacts to public health, water quality, or cultural sites, thus could not issue permits that guaranteed these protections, despite the legislature's requirement that it do so. They made the point at the time that other agencies, such as the State Water Resources Control Board, have jurisdiction over these impacts. So in January of this year, San Bernardino Superior Court ruled that federal mining law preempted the department's regulations of suction dredge mining on federal land since the department could not legally issue permits. The court commented that the state needs to clarify its laws with regards to suction dredge mining. So this bill seeks to require the Water Board to regulate the discharge of pollutants into waterways resulting from suction dredge mining as it regulates every other discharger under the Federal Clean Water Act. And by doing so, it addresses the court ruling directly, closes the gap in the state's statutory framework regarding mining by both giving the appropriate agency authority to deal with the water quality impacts and also ensuring that the mining activity conforms to both state and federal protections. I think this is even more important now that our state's in the grip of this historic drought. We need to protect water quality. And as you know, of course, the regulatory agency has the right and will collect fees to cover the costs of its regulatory activity. So the costs of the state are minimal. So I have with me David Quintana, who represents the Karuk tribe, who will speak in support of this bill.
Mr. Quintana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Quintana on behalf of the Karuk tribe. We are the tribe whose cultural practices and traditions have been devastated by this dredging practice. I'm not going to repeat what the author has said, but we would like to also add that this bill adds no substantial new regulatory costs. It merely allows the Water Board to use its existing permitting authority to protect the water quality from the degradation by the suction dredge mining practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Kyle Jones of Sierra Club, California, in support.
Jennifer Franklin with East Bay Municipal Utility District. Our board just took a support position. We apologize for not getting a letter into the committee, but wanted to express our support this morning.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support of this item. Witnesses in opposition. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Dale Meyer. I'm representing the assembled miners group that is made up of miners, mining group members from all the western states fighting for mining rights and access rights. I'm currently the communication officer for East Bay Prospectors in Concord, California. And I've been a small-scale miner since 1984. From now on, when I say we, I'm talking about the thousands of small-scale miners that we're representing here today. This bill should be about clean water and saving tax dollars, not appropriating more money, and I'll get to that. With the exception of Senator Nielsen, I know most of your districts are in urban areas. So with respect, I'm either reminding or informing you there's several Supreme Court cases that ruled water flowing through equipment like our sluice boxes, dredges, gold pans do not produce discharge. Number one in your packet that you all should have in front of you is a Supreme Court decision by the most famous one for us anyway. Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it's like a pot of soup. You put a ladle in a pot of soup, lift it up, put it back in the pot. There's nothing added. There is no discharge. Therefore, we don't qualify as waste dischargers. Item number 2 in your packet, highlighted in orange, the bill keeps referring to waste dischargers, mining waste. We simply don't qualify for that with our small scale mining equipment. That should be enough to see that that's a fatal flaw in the funding. If we don't have to buy permits, you're not going to have a self-funded permit process. Simply because we're not going to buy, small miners shouldn't have to buy permits because we do not discharge. The way I understand a self-funded permit process, I'm a licensed state contractor. I have to buy a permit to do electrical work at 123 Main Street. The trained inspector comes out, inspects my work, signs off on it. You're being asked to fund a state board, a discharge permit process, again, for miners that we don't believe discharge, and therefore won't pay for permits. And we're wondering, how are you going to enforce that? You give me a permit for my sluice box, pan, dredge, whatever you want, any of our equipment. How are you going to find us? Do we have to call in for an inspection? No, you're going to need law enforcement. I mean, there's nothing in this bill that explains how you're going to enforce this permit process. That's a wide open question, similar to the Marine Life Protection Act. When those marine life protection areas were put in at a small cost, when that was all said and done, the Department of Fish and Wildlife said, "Oh, we're going to need several $1 million a year for extra enforcement, personnel, boats, to enforce this little, small amount of money put into place." There was no provision for enforcement built into that.
We're going to ask you to please wrap up.
Okay. Well, if you look at, it's number 2 on your packet, Section E says it's unlawful for me to possess a vacuum dredge or vacuum or suction dredge in areas 1,000 yards from waters that are closed to dredging. Real life story. I have a cabin in Downeyville. How do I drive to Downeyville on Highway 49 without passing within 100 yards of these closed waters? I can't do it. I can't get to my cabin. I can't get to my federal mining claim because this will make me a lawbreaker just driving on a highway. When you talk further down in yellow, it says this permit is for suction dredge mining and related mining activities. Flipping to number 2.5, that opens it up. That's a blank check. Sluice boxes, my shovel, picks, anything that goes into the water, including my gold pan, which I see the miner up here with a gold pan. I see the Great Seal. Everything is threatened by this bill because of the poor wording. It's open-ended. It's a blank check.
Okay. We want to ask you to please wrap up. This is a fiscal committee. We want to stick to the fiscal aspects.
Well, that's what we're trying. All right. I will jump to the end. The last picture shows you the size of our equipment. And by the admission of the science from the Sierra Fund, the last report, they acknowledge big storm events move more of the sediments they're concerned about downstream than our little equipment could ever move. So you're being asked to fund a process where you're probably not going to sell any permits because we don't need them, we don't discharge, and we can't compete with what Mother Nature does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition.
My name is Chris Georgie. I'm also representing the Assembled Miners of California and the other Western states. And I have a request of Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen, would you please read the text of the bill?
Through the chair.
Oh, excuse me. May I please ask the text of the bill be read by the author?
Well, that'll be the discretion of the senator if he wants to oblige.
In the entire bill?
Just the text of the actual text that will be introduced as legislation, not
Sure.
the summary.
I'd be happy to. The area that is, I want to clarify that the section that the gentleman read earlier was actually part of existing law. That was section D that's now going to become E because of the new section. So there's a moratorium already on the books. And all that this bill seeks to do is give the water board regulatory control over this process. Is there a particular...
That's fine, Senator Allen, that's fine. If you can just continue with your testimony, because we have a lengthy agenda.
Okay. Simply put, the way this bill is written would not only regulate suction dredges, it would regulate literally any motorized pump within 100 yards of a water course, which would include that air pump to inflate your air raft would technically be considered a suction dredge, as would literally any hose which could possibly be used to remove sediment from a riverbed, whether or not it is actually being used to do so. It also includes all motorized sluice boxes. For those who are disabled, it is nearly impossible to bend over and work in stream while trying to prospect, but many of them can in fact work with what would be considered a power sluice, which is elevated and allows for much easier working. Furthermore, if you look at Supreme Court decisions, including the results of the Tulloch decision, it shows that this is not regulatable because it is not an addition from the outside world. Therefore, this bill as written would be imposing restrictions on that which is not under the EPA and Clean Water Act included.
Okay, thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition, please come forward. Just state your name and your organization.
Kerry of the 49ers. I've done a lot of mining in the last 5 years, and I found when you're talking about waste, I found a lot of liquid mercury in the rivers, a lot of it, and it's very toxic and extremely poisonous and dangerous to humans, wildlife, etc. And I've been able to remove it with certain little tools that I use, and I think that it would be very beneficial actually to allow suction dredging simply because it would reduce the levels of mercury that are actually in a lot of the rivers.
I'm going to ask if you can just stick to the financial components of the bill. We've already heard this in policy. I want to be, deferential. I know some of you folks haven't been through this process before, but if you can just stick to the financial arguments of the bill, please. Go ahead.
All right. My name is Brett Ketchum. I've been a dredger for 37 years. I've been in the aggregate business for 25 years, and this bill is written poorly, and it affects the small miners and the people who rely on it to get the gold for money because they need that to subsidize their income from Social Security or whatever.
Thank you.
I oppose this bill.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Gary Shaver, representing Pioneer Mining Association and Bear River Tours. This bill is written to take our rights away unless we're willing to put up the money as Sierra Fund, Nevada Irrigation, and put the money right back to the taxpayer. So they're putting the bill instead of what we're doing for free. I oppose the bill as it is written.
Thank you. Additional comments and witnesses in opposition. Go ahead.
Robert Cutting. I'm with 3 different corporations that are gold mining corporations, and I oppose the bill. And the reason I oppose it is that as the bill is written right now, I can't even use a vacuum cleaner to clean out a crack or crevice to get any gold. And anybody that does any gold mining knows that the gold is heavy and it settles down in these cracks and everything. So you can only go so far with a knife or whatever to get the gold out, and you really need to be able to suction that out. And what's happened is I go out and try to get gold with a sluice box or a pan or something like that, and I don't get enough for gas money. And so thus I don't go out and gold pan as much. And the towns are suffering in the area due to the fact that people just aren't going out there anymore. Gas stations are closing down, campgrounds are having problems. So there is a financial burden on the area.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition.
I'm Randy Harrelson from Granite Bay. We're not mining water, so the thing about the drought, I'm not sure what the point of that is, but if you read down to the bottom of the bill, it bans everything that has to do with mining, mining machines, mining equipment. And the only productive way to get gold is with a dredge. As I've been dredging since '87 till 2009. Fish and Game has always sold permits. It would just go up $2 a year. You go in, it's just a single piece of paper with some writing on it. You put your serial number that is on your dredge on that piece of paper, and you gave them $42, and it was over. So that's all I've got to say on
Thank you.
This bill should have been killed back in January, just lit on fire.
Thank
That's
you.
all I got to say.
Go ahead.
Hi, Rick Eddy, Director for the Western Mining Alliance. This bill has just got language in it that not only damages miners, but even recreationalists, and needs to be reworded. And I do believe that there is going to be a lot of extra costs if this bill goes through. Thank you. We oppose.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition of the bill. Comments or questions from committee? Senator Nielsen.
Mr. Chairman, I have great respect for the author. He is a fair man and a hardworking man, and I've always seen him looking for the good of the state. I will argue that in this particular bill, though, I think it is problematic, and there is a huge economic impact. We have got to take into account the economic impact of this industry. And I think we should also respect the history of this industry, which has made this state great. The gold was put on the dome by the gold mining industry, and the state really got made by the entrepreneurial spirit and the courage of miners who came here to this state to settle. And I would argue that law is long settled in this area, and the opportunities of federal preemption of state law is clear. I understand the miners are willing to accept broader statewide basin permits to be helpful to elevate the care and safety. They make a good point about the removal of mercury, and they're willing to work on that, and they have been for several years. I've been dealing with this issue since 2008, and I'm sure it was around well before then. I believe it's going to be far too punitive on a small industry in the state of California, but a historic industry that it should be respected. And there are longer-term possibilities here. Stream bed clearing is a big deal in small streams as well as our rivers. Huge issue, and I've dealt with it my whole life. And dredging is a useful technique. I argue we must not be hasty because the economic impact can be indeed the state treasury significantly.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. Additional comments or questions from committee? Seeing none, Senator Allen, would you like to close?
Well, thank you, members. And I just want to I don't disagree with anything that Senator Nielsen just said. And I guess, except to say that all this bill seeks to do is give the Water Board regulatory authority over this activity. It's not a ban. the reason why the drought was relevant, one of the commenters brought this up, the reason why the drought was relevant is because we obviously have an enormous drought, and the Water Board plays a role in making sure that we protect water safety. And that's what I'm seeking to do here with this bill. So I continue to be, open to reasonable changes that address the water quality concerns that we all have. Ultimately, this is just about giving the Water Board oversight over this type of work and allowing them to really hear and listen to the various concerns and also the potential the benefits associated with suction dredge mining, including mercury extraction, et cetera. So with that in mind, I very much thank everyone for their attention to this, and I don't know what the official ask at the Appropriations Committee is, but
I'll let you know.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
If that's with your close, without objection, we'll move this bill to the suspense file.
Move from suspense file, yes.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Next, we have Senator McGuire.